The air was thick with anticipation as I loaded the last of our bags into the trunk of the car. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over our suburban street. "Are we ready for the beach, Mom?" Ryan's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. His excitement was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile as I turned to him. "Absolutely. Just a few more minutes, and we'll be on our way," I replied, ruffling his hair. At 10, he was the perfect blend of innocence and joy, still captivated by the idea of sandcastles and waves. Mark emerged from the house, his phone glued to his ear. "Yeah, I'll call you back," he said, wrapping up his conversation as he stepped into the car. I caught a glimpse of his face, a mixture of focus and tension that didn't escape my notice. I brushed it off, hoping it was just work-related stress. We were headed to a beach resort, a chance for us to reconnect as a family away from the mundane chaos of everyday life. The drive felt longer than usual, the excitement in the air slightly dampened by Mark's distracted demeanor. He kept glancing at his phone, typing messages, and occasionally chuckling at something on the screen. "Everything okay, Mark?" I asked, trying to sound casual despite the knot forming in my stomach. "Yeah, just some last-minute stuff for work," he replied, his eyes still glued to the screen. I nodded, though my heart sank. I wanted to believe him, to trust that this vacation would be a fresh start for us. As we arrived at the resort, the salty breeze greeted us, and I inhaled deeply, allowing the ocean air to fill my lungs. "Look at the waves, Mom," Ryan exclaimed, tugging on my hand. His enthusiasm was contagious, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. We checked in and made our way to our room, the sound of seagulls cawing overhead. It was beautiful, an ocean view, palm trees swaying gently in the breeze, and the promise of adventure ahead. I set our bags down and turned to Mark, who was already on his phone again. "How about we hit the beach right away?" I suggested, trying to bring some excitement into the moment. "Sure, just give me a minute," he said absent-mindedly, still typing away. I felt a sting of disappointment, but pushed it down, not wanting to ruin the moment for Ryan. The beach was everything I had hoped for. The sand was warm beneath my feet, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled me with a sense of peace. Ryan darted ahead, racing towards the water. I watched him, my heart swelling with love. "Come on, Mom. The water's great," he called, splashing water in my direction. Okay, I'm coming." I laughed, letting go of my worries, if only for a moment. I joined him, feeling the cool water lap at my ankles. In a spur-of-the-moment gesture, Ryan turned and planted a kiss on my cheek. "I love you, Mom," he declared, his face lighting up with joy. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound ringing out like music against the backdrop of the ocean. "I love you too, buddy," I replied, pulling him in for a quick hug. The warmth of his affection wrapped around me, momentarily shielding me from the unease that had been creeping in since we arrived. But as I looked over at Mark, still engrossed in his phone, the contrast felt stark. The laughter of my son faded into the background, and I felt a familiar pang in my chest. I shook my head, trying to dispel the nagging thoughts. "He's just busy," I told myself. "We're here to have fun." As the sun dipped lower, I watched the waves with Ryan, the joy of the moment clashing against the growing shadows in my heart. I wanted to ignore the distance I felt from Mark, but it loomed larger with every passing minute. I squeezed Ryan's hand tighter, wishing for a sign that everything would be okay, that our family was still whole, just like the perfect summer day around us. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over the beach. As I stood in the dimly lit hotel room, my heart racing. I had just heard Mark's voice through the thin walls, low and intimate, talking to someone who clearly wasn't me. I peeked through the slightly ajar door, my breath hitching as I tried to piece together the fragments of the conversation that reached my ears. "Can't wait to see you again," he murmured, and my stomach twisted painfully. I should have walked away, should have brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks. But the way he spoke, so tenderly, so lovingly, sent chills down my spine. I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to calm the rising tide of emotions threatening to drown me. "Jessica." Mark's voice cut through my thoughts, startling me. I quickly turned, plastering a smile on my face as he entered the room, his phone slipping out of his hand, and onto the bed. The casual way he brushed off my tension made my chest tighten. "Hey, I was just looking for you," I stammered, my mind racing. "How was your call?" "Oh, it was nothing important," he replied, too nonchalantly, his eyes darting towards his phone. "Just some work stuff." I wanted to scream, to shake him and make him see how wrong he was. But instead, I nodded, my heart sinking deeper into despair. "Right, work stuff," I echoed, my voice flat. The next morning, I resolved to confront him. Ryan was busy building sandcastles, completely oblivious to the storm brewing within me. I found Mark sitting on the balcony, his phone again in hand, laughing at something on the screen. It made me feel sick. "Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions, "can we talk?" He looked up, surprised, but the laughter faded from his face. "Sure, Jess. What's up?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I've noticed you've been distant. You're always on your phone, and I heard you last night." His eyebrows furrowed, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. "I told you it was just work. I've been busy." "Busy?" I interrupted, the frustration bubbling over. "Busy enough to forget your family? Busy enough to have private calls with someone who isn't me?" I watched as his expression hardened, the warmth fading from his eyes. "Jessica, you're overreacting. I promise it's nothing." "Nothing." The word felt like fire on my tongue. It didn't sound like nothing. "I don't want to feel like I'm losing you, Mark. I need to know you're here with me." "I am here, Jess, but you need to trust me," he replied, his voice clipped. Trust. The word echoed in my mind, but trust was a fragile thing. How could I trust someone whose laughter I heard through the walls, knowing it was meant for another? As the day wore on, I tried to shake off the anxiety, but it clung to me like a shadow. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, but my heart felt heavy as I watched Ryan play in the water. He splashed around, carefree and innocent, a beautiful reminder of the joy I once felt in my family. Then, in a moment of pure affection, Ryan turned to me, dripping wet, and kissed me on the cheek. "I love you, Mom," he squealed, his laughter blending with the sound of the waves. The warmth of his little lips against my skin momentarily washed away my worries. "I love you too, buddy," I replied, pulling him into a tight hug. It was a fleeting moment, but it felt like a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. As I held him close, I realized that no matter how tumultuous things became with Mark, Ryan was my anchor. He was the light that fought to break through the dark clouds of betrayal and doubt. I pressed a kiss to the top of his head, wishing I could bottle this feeling of love and safety, knowing deep down that I needed to protect this connection, come what may. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was far from over. As I stood by the poolside of the resort, the warm sun beating down on my skin, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I glanced at Mark, who was sitting a few feet away, eyes glued to his phone. It was the same scene playing out day after day. His laughter was replaced by the tapping of fingers on a screen, and the distance between us seemed to stretch like the ocean waves crashing in the background. I wished I could shake off this feeling, but Lisa's voice echoed in my mind, urging me to trust my instincts. "Jess, you need to talk to him. Don't let this slide," she'd said during our last phone call. I could still hear the concern in her voice, the way she practically pleaded with me to confront Mark about his behavior. It was easy for her to say. She wasn't the one married to a man who seemed more interested in his phone than in the family we had built together. "Mom, can we go to the beach?" Ryan's voice broke my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. His innocent eyes sparkled with excitement, and I couldn't help but smile. "Sure, buddy, let's go," I said, trying to push my worries aside for his sake. As we walked down to the beach, Ryan's laughter filled the air, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of happiness. But just as quickly my thoughts returned to Mark. I needed to know what was going on, and I felt desperation creeping in. "I wonder if I should just go check his phone," I whispered to myself. Later that evening, after dinner, I seized the opportunity when Mark left his phone on the table to go grab a drink. My heart raced as I picked it up, my hands trembling slightly. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but the need for answers was overpowering. I unlocked the phone, my breath hitching as I scrolled through his messages. Then I saw it, a message from a woman named Sarah. My heart sank. The messages were flirty and intimate, filled with inside jokes and emojis that made my stomach churn. "Can't wait to see you again," one read, and another, "You make me feel alive." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This wasn't harmless flirting. It was something much deeper. "Mom, are you okay?" Ryan's voice startled me, and I quickly put the phone back down, trying to mask the panic on my face. "Yeah, sweetheart, just a little tired," I managed to say, forcing a smile. But inside, I was crumbling. I had to confront Mark. I couldn't let this slide any longer. That night, as the waves crashed violently against the shore, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I waited until Ryan had gone to bed, my heart racing as I prepared to confront Mark. He returned from a late-night swim, his skin glistening under the moonlight, completely unaware of the storm brewing within me. "Hey, Jess, you should have joined me. The water's amazing," he said, his voice cheerful, but it grated on my nerves. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but filled with underlying emotion. He frowned, sensing my seriousness. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "I saw the messages on your phone." "Who is Sarah?" His expression shifted instantly, the amusement fading as he tried to brush it off. "Oh, come on, Jess. It's nothing. Just some harmless flirting. You know how it is." "Harmless?" I interrupted, feeling the betrayal cut deep. "This isn't just harmless. You're texting her like you care about her. How long has this been going on?" "Jessica, please. You're overreacting. It's not what you think." Mark defended himself, but his words felt hollow. "I can't believe this," I said, shaking my head. "You've been distant, and now I find this? You're telling me it's just flirting?" "Look, I love you. Okay? This is just some fun, nothing serious," he insisted, but the pain in my chest was overwhelming. "Fun? That's how you define it?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You think I don't see what you're doing? This isn't just a game to me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. "Jess, you're blowing this out of proportion." "I promise. It's nothing," but his words felt like knives, each one twisting deeper into my heart. I wanted to scream, to let out the anguish that was consuming me, but instead, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. "You've betrayed me, Mark. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." And as I stood there, looking into the eyes of the man I thought I knew, I realized that the life I had built was crumbling around me, and I was terrified of what the next day would bring. As I knelt in the warm, golden sand, I was acutely aware of the laughter and splashes of water around me. Ryan and I were building a sandcastle, a fortress of dreams that stood defiantly against the tide. My heart ached with a mixture of love and sorrow. Here was my son, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon of our beach day. Each bucketful of sand felt like a moment of reprieve from the chaos that had invaded my life, a temporary escape from the suffocating weight of betrayal. "Mom, look, it's a castle fit for a king," Ryan exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he added the final touch, a seashell perched atop the turret. His innocence was a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder of simpler times when life was about sandcastles and ice cream cones, not secrets and heartbreak. "Absolutely, my little architect," I replied, forcing a smile, though inside I felt like I was crumbling like the sand beneath my fingers. I couldn't shake the image of Mark's phone, lit up with messages from Sarah, a name that now echoed ominously in my mind. I watched my son's joy, wishing I could freeze this moment forever. But the reality of our situation loomed like a dark cloud overhead. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the beach, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I needed air, space to breathe away from the laughter and the sharp reminders of my husband's infidelity. The rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore mirrored the turmoil inside me. It was then that I spotted her, Sarah. She was walking hand in hand with her own family, her laughter ringing out like a mocking bell. My heart raced, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through me. I felt frozen in place, as if the very sand beneath my feet had turned to stone. What were the odds that I would encounter the woman who had shattered my world? "Jessica." Sarah's voice cut through the din of my thoughts, laced with surprise and a hint of guilt. I forced myself to stand tall, though my insides twisted with rage. "Sarah," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm within. "I didn't expect to see you here." She offered a nervous laugh, her eyes darting to the ground, then back to me. "Yeah, our family decided to take a vacation too. It's a small world." "Huh? Small indeed," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. It's funny how you can be in the same place as someone without realizing the truth about them." Her brow furrowed, confusion mingling with a hint of defensiveness. "What do you mean?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "You believed Mark was single, didn't you?" Sarah's expression shifted, revealing a flicker of embarrassment. He told me he was separated. I didn't know he had a family." The air between us thickened with unspoken words. I wanted to scream, to unleash the fury that had been building inside me, but instead, I felt a strange sense of pity for her. She was just as much a victim of Mark's lies as I was. "Separated," I echoed, disbelief creeping into my voice. "How could he lie to both of us?" "I had no idea," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought he was just a single dad looking for companionship." My heart sank further, realizing the depths of Mark's betrayal. He had spun a web of deceit, ensnaring us both. "You deserve better than that," I replied, my voice softer now. "We both do," she nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. A moment passed between us, a fragile understanding born from our shared pain. But the moment was fleeting, overshadowed by the reality that awaited me. "I need to go," I said finally, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "I have a son to take care of." As I walked away, I felt the weight of the conversation hang heavily in the air behind me. The waves crashed against the shore, a reminder that life continued to move forward. Even as I felt stuck in place, my mind raced with thoughts of Mark, of everything he had taken from me. I had to confront him, to demand answers. But as I glanced back one last time, I saw Sarah watching me, her face a mask of confusion and regret. The beach was beautiful, but for me, it was tainted with the reality of my life's unraveling threads. I had to gather my strength for the inevitable confrontation ahead, knowing that the truth was more complicated than I ever imagined. The sun poured through the curtains of our beachside room, casting warm patterns on the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing with a mixture of anger and resolve. Today was the day I would confront Mark. Armed with the knowledge of Sarah, I felt a surge of empowerment, but it was quickly overshadowed by a gnawing fear. What would this mean for our family? For Ryan? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as I glanced at my phone, half expecting a text from Mark that might somehow ease my mind. But there was nothing. As I stepped outside, the salty breeze whipped around me, invigorating yet daunting. The beach was alive with laughter, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I walked toward the sand, searching for a moment of clarity. Just then, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mom, look what I made." Ryan's voice was filled with excitement. He rushed toward me, his little hands clutching something tightly. My heart softened instantly, momentarily pushing aside the impending confrontation with Mark. "What is it, honey?" I knelt down, curiosity piqued. With a wide grin, he opened his palm to reveal a beautiful, smooth shell. In the center, he had carefully etched "I love you, Mom" with a small stick. My heart swelled. "Oh, Ryan, it's beautiful," I exclaimed, tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you so much. I found it on the beach. I thought it would make you happy." His eyes sparkled with pride, and for a moment the weight of my troubles faded away. "It does make me happy. You always know how to brighten my day," I said, pulling him into a tight embrace. His small arms wrapped around me, and I felt a renewed sense of strength in that innocent moment. As we pulled apart, I realized I couldn't delay the inevitable any longer. "I have to go talk to Dad now, okay?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay, Mom. I love you," he replied, running off to join other kids playing near the water. I made my way toward the area where I last saw Mark, my heart pounding with each step. Would he deny it again? Would he try to charm his way out of this? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more painful than the last. But when I turned the corner, my heart dropped. There he was, laughing and holding hands with Sarah. The sight of them together, so carefree and intimate, shattered the tiny pieces of hope I had been clinging to. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. My breath caught in my throat, and everything around me faded into a blur. "Mark," I called out, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and fury. They turned to me, and for a split second, there was shock on Mark's face, followed by a look of guilt that only deepened my pain. "Jess, wait," he began, but I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. "Wait? You want me to wait while you parade around with her?" I spat, my voice rising. "How could you do this to me?" To Ryan, Sarah looked between us, her expression shifting from surprise to something more defensive. "I didn't know you were still together," she said, her voice shaky. I thought, "Stop. I don't want to hear your excuses," I interrupted, my heart pounding in my chest. "You think this is some kind of game?" Mark stepped forward, attempting to reach for my arm. "Jessica, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you love her? That this is all some big joke to you?" I could feel the tears streaming down my cheeks, hot and angry. "You've betrayed our family." Ryan's laughter echoed from where he was playing, a stark contrast to the storm brewing between us. In that moment, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. How could I protect my son from this heartbreak? But before I could say another word, I turned to see Ryan approaching. His innocent smile faded as he took in the scene, confusion written all over his young face. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" he asked, his voice small. The sight of my son standing there, caught in the crossfire of our chaos, brought my heart to a halt. I wanted to shield him from this mess, but I knew the truth was out there, looming over us like a dark cloud. I stood on the soft, warm sand, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over everything. My heart raced as I spotted Mark in the distance, laughing with Sarah, their bodies too close together for my comfort. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of betrayal coursing through me. This was the moment I needed to confront him, to peel back the layers of deception that had wrapped around our lives like an unyielding shroud. "Mark," I called, my voice rising above the sound of crashing waves. He turned, his face momentarily blank before a flicker of realization crossed his features. He walked towards me, his casual demeanor a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside me. "What's up, Jess?" he asked, a hint of annoyance creeping into his tone as he approached. I could see the slight flush on his cheeks, a telltale sign of guilt. "Can we talk?" I gestured towards a quieter area of the beach, my heart pounding in my chest. I was aware of Ryan playing nearby, but this was something that needed to be resolved. "Sure," he replied, his voice lacking its usual warmth. We moved a few steps away, the noise of the beach fading as I attempted to gather my thoughts. "Are you having an affair?" The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but I forced them out. I needed the truth, no matter how painful. Mark's expression shifted, and he took a step back, crossing his arms defensively. "What? Where is this coming from?" "Don't play games, Mark. I overheard you talking to Sarah." I pressed, my voice rising. "I saw you two together. It's not just harmless flirting, is it?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen countless times in our years together. "Jessica, listen. I love both of you. This isn't what you think. Love? You think it's love to betray me like this? To lie to our son?" I felt the heat in my cheeks, a mixture of anger and hurt. I needed him to see how deep this cut was. "Please, just let me explain," he said, his tone turning pleading as if he was trying to calm a storm. "It's complicated. Sarah and I—" "Complicated?" I interrupted, feeling a lump in my throat. "What's complicated is the life we built together, the trust you've shattered. You're tearing our family apart." Just as the tension reached its peak, Ryan appeared at the edge of the beach, his small frame silhouetted against the fading light. I didn't know how much he had heard, but the look on his face was one of confusion and hurt. "Mom? Dad," he called, his voice small and uncertain. "Ryan, go back to the sandcastle," I urged, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But he didn't budge. Instead, he stepped forward, his eyes glistening with tears. "I heard you. I saw everything," he said, his voice trembling. "Ryan, sweetheart, it's not," I started, but he interrupted me. "I'm disappointed in you, Dad," he said, his voice surprisingly strong for his age. "You shouldn't be doing this to Mom. It's not fair." Mark's face paled, and for a moment, he looked like a man caught in a storm he couldn't escape. "Ryan, you don't understand." He tried to reason, but his words fell flat. "I understand enough," Ryan shot back, his small fists clenched. "You're hurting her, and you're hurting me." I felt a swell of pride for my son, but the pain in my chest was overwhelming. The air around us thickened with unspoken truths, and I didn't know how to navigate this new reality. Just when I thought I had reached my breaking point, Ryan stepped closer to me, his eyes locked onto mine. "Mom," he said softly, "I know the truth." With that, he leaned in and kissed me on the lips. It was innocent, yet charged with an understanding that transcended our years. The world around us faded. It was just the two of us in that moment. When he pulled away, the gravity of his words hung in the air between us. "What do you mean?" I whispered, searching his eyes for answers, for clarity in this chaos. Ryan looked from me to Mark, his gaze steady and piercing. "I know what's going on, and I'm not going to let you get hurt anymore." As I stood there, heart pounding, I realized that Ryan had grown up in ways I hadn't fully acknowledged. He wasn't just my son. He was a witness to the fractures in our family. The tension in the air was palpable, a swirling mix of love, betrayal, and the weight of unshared secrets. I was left standing on that beach, my world shattered, yet somehow Ryan's brave declaration gave me a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. What lay ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing. I needed to protect my son, no matter the cost.